Oh boy. Okay. Sorry about that. I had a visitor. So we were looking at the mandated reporting for consensual sexual activity. So anytime someone under 18 has unconsensual sex or sexual activity, that is a mandated child abuse report. So I just had a teen who told me she went to a sleepover with her ex-girlfriend. It's kind of his junior high ex-girlfriend thing. And while she was sleeping, she woke up and her girlfriend was fondling her under her pants. She didn't want that. So that's an automatic child abuse report. Um, you can always call CPS and they will cross report to the police as necessary. That's just one of the ways you can do it. But looking at this chart, you can see that the way I break it up, because I hate this chart, I don't know why, is the age of consent in California is 14 years old. So if you are 14, you can have sex with somebody over the age of 14 up to the age of 20. So 14 to 20 is a-okay as far as child abuse goes. Okay. Um, Anybody under the age of 13 can have sex with anybody or have any activity of sex with anybody under the age of 13. Um, so it's weird why we don't report that as child abuse, but once they turn 14, we do. But so two 13-year-olds having sex is not child abuse. But once that 13-year-old turns 14 and it's a 13 and a 14-year-old, that is actually child abuse against the 14-year-old. So you would be reporting that. Under the age of 13, it's using it as discretion. So 13 years old is like seventh, eighth. I was 13 in the ninth grade, so seventh, eighth, or ninth grade. So thinking about middle school, high school, freshman having sexual activity with a 5-year-old, obviously we're going to report for child abuse. But if that, you know, seventh and eighth grader, that 12 and 13-year-old, we might not report consensual. We're only talking about consensual sexual activity. We might not report that. It's up to your discretion. When it comes to consent, they also have to be, there we go. I think I got lost a little bit. When it comes to sexual activity, it also has to be within the same developmental status, so the same developmental range. So if you have somebody who is severely delayed 14-year-old having sex with a 14-year-old, you might consider that to be child abuse if they're so delayed that they cannot give consent. But that's more later. So 14 years and under is child abuse. So someone who's 14 and someone who's under the age of 14 is a child abuse report. Someone who's 14 with a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, that range is not child abuse. Once that 20-year-old, I keep freezing. Once that 20-year-old turns 21, then we have child abuse. Okay. So a good rule of thumb is to know the consent is 14 for sex. Consent for therapy is 12, but consent for sex is 14. And then remember, if they can drink, the partner needs to be old enough to drive. So old enough to drink is 21. Old enough to drive is 16. So if you are 21 and older, your partner needs to be 16 or older, which says that as far as child abuse goes, a 16-year-old, 17-year-old can have sex with any age range they want from 14 to 400. Okay. But under 14, not okay. 16 and up is not child abuse to any age. Okay. So 14 to 20, this is how I look at the three little gaps here. 13 and under, 14 to 20, 16 and up. All right. You are not required to ask for birthdays with your client, but I like to let them know whenever I have someone in that under 18 range telling me that they're having sex, and they tell me about their partner, I say, look, I just need you to know that if you tell me how old they are and this is the range it fits in, I need to report this. So if you feel like you don't want to tell me their age, I would, let you know what's going on. Okay, so that's part of our child abuse section and our domestic violence section, so our abuse section, and something to have for there. So now what I really want to do is go through one, looking at this with a lens of crisis. So we're going to read this one more time. One, you are an intern at a community counseling center that provides services to local schools. Dr. Tebow recently became a board certified psychologist. He supervises you, 4 interns, and 2 trainees for 1 hour individually and 2 hours of group each week. 1H10 is your 11th client. Okay, so that's what we know. We know 1 is 10 and is our 11th client. Juan's parents, Linda and Jorge Jimenez, came to this initial intake session without Juan. So I've yet to meet Juan. Linda is 35. She's a housewife and active volunteer. And Jorge works as a flight engineer for TACA Airlines. Jorge is quiet through most of the interview except to say, so now I've met him, except to say he is traveling for 3 to 4 days a week due to work, and he knows his son does not do well in school. His mom says he's very hyper. He doesn't like to go to bed at night and puts up a fight. He does not play well with other children. He is impatient and often yells and fights with them. He doesn't listen when told to do his chores, and he can't seem to follow instructions given by the teacher. He's failing in school, having the problems for some time. In your first session, he does not look you in the eyes when he talks to you. He participates in different activities you ask him. So my first red flag is always suicide for any situation, because I'm looking at kind of what's going on for him. I'm noticing that he has been having these problems for some time, but he's failing out of school. I'm seeing that he's having some issues around sleep. It doesn't seem like he has many friends if he's fighting with the other kids. His mom and dad seem like they're possibly very busy with work and with volunteering. But he's just got some things going on. So I'm just a little worried about the little guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assess Juan. All right, so I'm going to type this out. I will assess Juan for self-harm and suicidality. If it becomes imminent, then I will encourage a voluntary admission to the hospital. Or if they're not willing to take him, I will call to initiate a 5150 and notify my supervisor. If it is not imminent, then I will create a safety plan with Juan and his parents. I will increase my check-ins with his parents. So I will set up a plan to where one of his or both of his parents call me each day at a certain time to check in on Juan. I'm also going to ask to increase my office visits Juan. So if I'm seeing him on Monday, I'm going to ask to see him again on Thursday. And, increase my office visits so I can keep contact with him. I will give Juan's parents and Juan in my safety plan crisis referral numbers. I'm also going to give mom and dad some numbers that they can call if they feel concerned. So Juan's 10. I'm going to just for shits and giggles assume he's a 10-year-old with a cell phone. So I'm going to give him the suicide call line. I'm going to give him the text line as well. So if he feels he wants to talk to someone, he has that. And then I'm going to give the parents a support line. So if they feel they need something, they can call. I'm also going to give the mobile crisis and emergency psychiatric services number. So if they feel like they're really worried about him, I'm going to manage the environment. Just nothing says he's ever hurt himself or he's going to hurt himself, but I am going to manage the environment and recommend that mom and dad don't have anything that one can hurt himself with. Like if there are any guns in the home, they are locked up. If there are any medications that could harm him, that they have them high and put away. And any other weapons are kind of put away just in case, because he's going through a lot, and school is a big stressor if he's failing out of that. So I'll do those connections with Juan. Okay, so I think I covered all of those of check-in, safety plan, increase the office visits, provide crisis numbers, and I've already said I will. It's not necessarily break confidentiality because they're his parents and he's 10 years old, but I will establish a watch group with his parents, right? So I'll have them check in on him. Where am I on this? So my next thing is, I'm not going to talk about it, so you'll see that I don't even write it. I'm not worried about homicide, but I'm going to talk about it with you guys because the reason I'm not worried about homicide is because 10-year-olds fighting in the playground feels very normal to me. Doesn't feel like a murderer. Okay. I am going to put down abuse for child abuse. And it's not that there is child abuse happening, but there is a flag that I see. I talked about this last week. My flag is that so part of the flag is gone in this second paragraph, last sentence. He knows his son does not do well in school. So that tells me that I'm probably not dealing with a deadbeat dad, right? I have a dad who knows about his son. Okay, so that makes me feel good. I am just a little concerned because, um, I'm just a little worried about mom describing him as very hyper and not going to bed and not really listening when he's told to do chores. I know that can be very stressful for parents. So I'm just a little worried about their disciplinary practices and want to check in on what that looks like when he's not doing what he's told, right? So I would assess for that. And that is something I do in a different section that we'll talk about. But, I would assess disciplinary practices. And then I'll put down what I would do if there's child abuse, right? Which is I would make a written report within 36 hours and call immediately by phone. I'm also just like low key concerned about neglect because what I said last time was I'm not sure what an active volunteer is. So she's a housewife, she's home. That doesn't mean she's home with the kid. But what does active volunteer mean? Does that mean that she's volunteering only when one is at school? Or does that mean that when dad's gone on these 3 to 4 days a week, like what's mom doing there? So is there a nanny taking care of them? Or is mom just kind of left alone a lot of the time? There's no age range in California. There's no set age of when you can or cannot leave your kid home alone that I really remember. I looked this up before. I think it's more based on development and maturity, but 10 years old is a little young, in my opinion, to be leaving a kid home alone for a long period of time. If he's chilling, fine. If he's not, then possibly have a report. So again, by phone immediately, written report within 36 hours. I'm not really seeing anything for drugs or alcohol in Juan. I might assess his parents because part of working with a kid is also assessing their parents for what's happening with them. I'm not super concerned about froze again. I'm not super concerned about parents' drug use. Okay. At times I have been, but I'm not for this vignette. So we've got abuse, alcohol, drugs. Nothing is referring to an eating disorder, so I'm not going to put that in. So some of the referrals I'm going to make are going to be, again, whenever it comes to suicide, we're always referring to a psychiatrist or an MD for evaluation. Just anytime that there is depression. For the possible neglect, I would refer them to some kind of parenting class. And I might work with them to get some, what is that word? A break. Why I can't think of the word, I don't know. But to get them some kind of respite, right? So if they're feeling overwhelmed by taking care of him. It's freezing here.